I'll start off by saying a great week for us for the University of Miami program, welcoming 33 new student athletes to the program, as well as the defensive coordinator, and the announcement of one of our better players, one of the best players in the country, returning as well. This is always an exciting time of year for us because of the ability to make the program better, right? A lot of moves made in January at all levels, and both in the areas of addition and subtraction, right? At the personnel level, at the coaching level, opportunities to do nothing but get better. And so we've been at it relentlessly, and we intend to continue to do so and continue progress of the program. So a few things to get into, I'm sure, but in the meantime, questions?
Mario, before, well, probably awkward to start with this, but before we start looking ahead, I wanted to ask you one thing about the bowl game. There was a lot of noise about Cam out there about just the reaction to him not playing in the second half. I know the noise doesn't matter much to you, but the notion that he quit, whatever, how did that affect you, and what would you say about what went on?
Well, I would give it clarity real quick. I'd say for sure a false narrative. Okay, I think what was very clear to us as we got closer and closer to game day, it became increasingly evident that Cam was more likely going to be the first player selected in the NFL draft, and that's when decisions were made that were best for everybody, and they played out that way. Okay. And then for obvious reasons, we're not going to discuss personnel, we're not going to discuss game plan for anybody at any time. And I don't feel the need to go race to squash false narratives and a bunch of bullshit that people like to start because that's their way of, doing whatever their job is. So that's where it's at, that's where it's always been. Cam has been an exceptional, an elite Miami Hurricane. As a competitor, as a player, as a teammate. He's elevated the profile, the exposure of the University of Miami. He is leading a legacy that's going to be impactful for generations to come. He's the best I've been around, and I look forward to watching him lead an NFL franchise to championships and watching him play on Sundays, and certainly, that's about it.
The fact that he's only here for 1 year, but assuming he does go #1, it's going to be a University of Miami quarterback going #1, due respect to Kurt Warner and Washington State. He's going to get announced as a Miami quarterback. Right. So what's the value of that to the program? The impact that he made here in 11 months?
Yeah, it's already paying dividends. It did in resulted. He's a big reason why we won 10 games and had a chance to really win every game. And he also has led to belief in a program through exposure, through validation of systems in place that when surrounded with the right personnel, things can really take off. And Cam, one of the best things about him is his gratitude. He came here after a 5-7 season, right? Having to scramble and play from behind in a lot of instances. And here he elevated his stock, he elevated the University of Miami, he gained invaluable relationships. He has set the tone for what the standard, right? The expectation is going forward, as difficult as that might be and sound. But it's already paid dividends in recruiting and people understanding that Miami is really serious about being a contender year in and year out. So can't say enough great things about the guy, and he deserves for great things to be said about him because you know what? They're true and they're real.
Mario, when you said it's already paid dividends in recruiting, when you look at bringing a guy like Carson Beck, is that the direct line you can make from saying what Cam Ward did here in a year and what you guys can help Carson Beck do for the future?
Yeah, I think for him and for generations again to come, systematically we're where we want to be offensively, and certainly we had to make some adjustments defensively because we're not there where we feel like now we are going to be in a great path to be there. But of course, I think when people get an opportunity to see, okay, what's it look like and what can it look like for me, you couldn't draw it up any better, right? These situations are almost analogous, so to speak, right, year in and year out. So all in all, just I think for the positions that surround that position as well, right, the protection, given by the offensive line, the guys in the backfield that would benefit from teams maybe trying to play us differently, create more space for the running game. I think Damian Martinez is a great example of that as well. And then for wide receivers, to be in a system that allows them to go and play fast, play hard, and we expect them to block as well as they catch footballs, but they're going to catch a lot of footballs here. And that was evident, and it's been a while since Miami's had the #1 offense in the country. You know, very historic season for us in a couple different ways, but certainly offensive.
With Coach Heatherman, can you go through the process of how he popped up on your radar and what you liked about his defense at Minnesota and some of the calling cards of that defense?
Coach Heatherman. Coach Heatherman embodies what you look for, what I look for in a coach. And that being said, it's a guy that is an elite teacher. And from my interaction with him and the people that I know and trust that he has worked with and worked for, a tremendous human being. And emphasis is placed on him on being able to use the personnel, maximize the use of the elite personnel he has or he may not have. And for us, we're built to be a 4-down front and turn our edge players loose and be disruptive. And that's what he has done at really at all levels, and most recently at the Power 4 level in the Big Ten, right? So really sound in communication. They play really, really physical. They tackle really, really well. They certainly force a significant amount of turnovers, and they put pressure on the quarterback, right? They make you play uncomfortable. What sticks out probably most, and what we needed mostly for us, is adaptability. Okay, like this past year, obviously we had some injuries, and in the secondary, and we weren't deep to begin with, and that's my fault. And I'm certainly not going to throw stones at a coach that was here or not. I appreciate everyone that's ever worn a Miami jacket, a Miami shirt, a Miami helmet. Okay, but we didn't do very well defensively, and it was a steady decline. And at some point in time, regardless of your personnel that you have or you don't have, you got to be adaptable. You got to make the adjustments necessary to not be perfect, but to play as good as you can, get stops, and give yourself a chance to win. And I think that really sticks out to me about Coach Heatherman. All right, we're very detailed, gets after it. You know, he's obviously coached for Greg Schiano, who I have all the respect in the world for. You know, we know the types of defenses he's running, the type of turnaround he had here when he had a chance to go here. And Coach Heatherman is his own man, and he made the best impression and felt that he filled the need in the best way of any of the candidates in the country.
I wanted to ask you about Coach Schiano. Did you even have to check with him about what Coach Heatherman is all about, or just when a guy works for Greg, do you know what that guy's about?
I do know what it's about, and I didn't want to put him in a rough situation because, I mean, all these coaches, we have kind of relationships, right? And you put agents and coaches and programs in situations that are tough to deal with. But we have spoken about Coach Heatherman at length several times before this, and certainly a star in the making, coming off an awesome year. You know, you saw statistically what it is. I won't rattle off all that stuff and waste your time, but you're looking at a guy that is a really intentional, hardworking, great relationship and connection guy. Another thing that's at the forefront of this, right? It's got to be connected to your people. That means both the staff and the players. And I think he is a guy that could certainly elevate the standard of our program defensively and from a cultural standpoint as well.
How do you kind of explain this time of year in that there's still some elements of putting 2024 to bed? Second semester started. Kids are here.
Yep.
Spring ball is like 6 weeks away, as crazy as that is. Like, how do you sort of marry the end of 24 and the start of 25 and take care of both ends of the business?
Well, I think with players, you close 24 on the final 24 snap. And I think 25, it's never stopped. I mean, 25 has been worked on since 23. Does that make sense? You know, the whole intent of us when we got here was to build a program that's sustainably a contender and a championship program. And so as you see these pieces are starting to fill in, because we are replacing some production on offense, but you're replacing them with guys like Elijah Lofton, who you have seen flashes of. That's a really high level, high caliber player. Guys like JoJo Trader, who stepped in the bowl game and had himself a touchdown and some big receptions. So it's not stacking, it's bringing in and developing talent, so when their turn comes, whether it's right away or whether it's delayed a year or two, that they're ready to go. So it's never stopped. The new guys moved in on Saturday, I should say. On Sunday, yesterday, we had our team meeting, and we're out there on the field today. We're in full throttle, winter conditioning, strength and conditioning, lifting, running, implementation of systems. Now we have a coordinator in place as well. That hasn't quite started, but offensively we have. And these are high-level freshmen and high-level transfers.
Mario,
And it's not over yet. We just keep going. You know, the window hasn't closed for some players, and we'll aggressively pursue as it fits our needs.
Mario, what would you like about Carson Beck with what you saw, and then why do you think he's a good fit for your program?
Oh, a lot of reasons. I mean, if you watch him on tape, he had an elite year in 23 and a very good season in 24. He's been protected different ways, been through a couple of different system morphs, right? Coach Monken was there, and then I went to Coach Bobo, guys that I have tremendous respect for. There's some system carryover, and he's athletic, he's smart, he's got superior arm talent, he's accurate, he can extend plays, he can also sit in the pocket, he runs well. He's a great human being, and he has demonstrated leadership qualities, and he's really hard on himself, and he wants to be great, and one of the best qualities is he wanted to be here at Miami, you know, and that's gaining more and more value as we head into this next generation of college football. You gotta want guys that want to be Miami Hurricanes as bad as they want to do and be anything else. A guy that's really geared and convicted upon having team success. We see all those qualities in him, and certainly looking forward to working with him.
I only ask you this because his injury situation is somewhat public.
Right.
What do you expect from him in the spring? Do you expect to see him throw at all in the spring? Is there hope? Is there any, I guess it all depends on how quickly he heals and rehabs, but what is the expectation as far as when he can throw?
Well, I mean, there's always hope, you know, the sooner the better. I know we went through examinations yesterday and everything's ahead of schedule. I'll probably have more clarity in maybe a couple of weeks, so I hate to say this or that. I know that certainly for the summertime, everything is scheduled to be full throttle, full go, but there is anticipation of maybe earlier. I just don't have it yet, and I'd hate to speak out of turn, you know, but I'm gonna give it to you as soon as I get it.
How much does it matter? I mean, he isn't going into a 6-year college. I mean, obviously he wants to build a rapport with receivers and learning the offense, I get all that, but is it a big deterrent? If he couldn't throw this spring, is that really a setback given how much football he's played?
Well, if you can't practice, it's certainly not optimal, but certainly if you can be there and connect with your guys, and let me go back, Cam Ward was really successful because he was around and he connected, and those relationships then drove a collective work ethic, right? A collaborative effort of guys that want to be great and want to win, and he wants to be present and doing everything he possibly can, whatever that may be. So it's critically important to be around. If you can't throw, there's still a lot of things you can do that lead up to the game or lead up to playing and practicing the game. And our return to play specialists in conjunction with, you know, the guys that did his work, I mean, already off to a great relationship, and they're going to ensure that he comes back better and stronger than he's ever been. But you're looking at a driven, committed young man that recognizes opportunity, is grateful to be around a group of guys that are driven like he is driven, and is starting to see a lot of the pieces that is necessary for his success. They're starting to fall into place as well. And a guy like that, I always put a little pressure on him to go get some more pieces, right? Make sure that you do everything you can in terms of talent, personnel acquisition, and surround yourself with great people, great competitors, great human beings.
You touched on the secondary depth. Just how do you feel about where the group is now? You brought in, I think, about a handful of guys from the transfer portal. You guys coming back, and then or the freshman class coming as well. How do you feel the depth is going to be, or is looking? You know,
certainly better. I mean, by the end of last year, we were in a tough situation, and again, I blame myself. I mean, I should have done a better job just getting more guys here that were healthy and or could sustain better health, because at the end we're down to really 2 corners and nickels standing in there as boundary corners, and that's tough. And you got to make it work. You got to do whatever you can to make it work. We certainly have a lot more. We're getting to normal depth. We're not there yet. You know, people I think are going to say, "Wow, that's, you know, we're taking a handful of DBs and whatnot." But you know, when you have a roster of 85 scholarships, I know the limits are changing now with the 105, and that changes that number dynamic. It really doesn't change the number of frontline players that you have. We're not all the way there yet. You've got to play a lot of DBs throughout the course of the season, you know, and if you think about it, with you go nickel times 2, that's 10 guys right there, right? You have to be versatile enough to play different spots, and learning those positions requires a lot of reps, and those reps cannot be, done without, having enough bodies out there. So we're getting closer.
Keith Mesidor returning, what does that mean?
Oh man, great news. Akeem Mesidor, and he's an edge player, for us. This is the best part about Akeem Mesidor. Akeem is selfless, completely unselfish. And you recognize that last year to help us win, it would benefit us for him to go inside and play. And he got some awesome reps. And you know what? He caught the attention of a lot of scouts. So for his future, it paints well because guys that are willing to go in there and do that dirty work, it speaks volumes of your toughness, right? Your resiliency, your competitiveness, and now, being able to keep him, outside and let him do what he does. He's a special person. He's a special talent. He's as explosive and as strong as you can have for an edge setter. He's got a ton of experience, so looking forward to him having just an absolute monster year.
Retention doesn't get as much buzz in the portal windows in general, but how pleased were you with it in that phase of the program this window with the
Yes,
players
sir.
you were able to retain?
Yes, sir, extremely pleased, and that was mission number one. We've recruited hard, right? We've had several conferences in here talking about talent we brought in and everything else, and there's no point in doing that if you can't develop them and retain them. And we feel that we have developed and retained the majority of the prominent players that we have brought to this program. So that was at a premium, that was priority number one, and it's gone great so far. And we're gonna head into the spring window. God knows what type of chaos that's gonna bring. I'm sure there'll be plenty of drama. You guys will be whacking away at the keyboard like crazy as all that stuff plays out, but we feel like we're in a good position and we're going to stay aggressive and do what's best for our players and do what's right for the University of Miami.
Would you go out and get Taylor Edwards to your personnel department? Can you talk about his addition and just the importance of continuing to add personnel people in this day and age? Things are changing.
Well, as these directors and these moves that we've been making, it's getting a little bit more and more complex. Your pool of players that are available to be recruited, evaluated or whatnot, just grows more and more. And, Taylor's very familiar with processes. When we used to work in Tuscaloosa under Coach Saban, and certainly has gone to a couple other places and has had great success establishing lines of scrimmage with great personnel. Certainly at the skill position, you look at his history. He's shown a tremendous ability to find great players and help staffs acquire talent. And I think when you have guys like that and some of the other guys that you're already familiar with on our staff, it becomes a really powerful, organization. And we need that because recruiting has has been forever almost a 24/7 job. We can't get enough sets of eyes on film. We can't get enough ears listening to people give their testament to certain players from a character standpoint, competitiveness standpoint, and Taylor's experience and his ability to work with others. It's a tremendous boon for our organization.
Mario, if you could comment on a couple players. For JoJo Trader, you mentioned him, kind of what you saw in the bowl game, kind of also what you envisioned for him spring, and then also Ruben Bain, the keys for him to have his best season as a Hurricane coming up.
Well, I think for you mentioned two guys that certainly have, the local guys that have done well and show a lot of promise. In JoJo's case, JoJo he showed in that game what he showed while he was healthy. JoJo did have some ups and downs and some bumps that kept him from consistent practice time, but he had been flashing. He had been showing a lot of the stuff that he can do. It was good at cutting loose. And for JoJo, the next step is strength and conditioning, and just being more of a pro about all of his dailies, and he's doing that. Awesome young man, awesome mom, tremendous upbringing, all heart, all about being great Miami Hurricanes. Sky's the limit for JoJo. You've seen him enough in high school. I know you've been out to those games. He's done it all. He's done that. And then for a guy like Ruben Bain, the offseason is critical. For him, for guys like Francis, all those guys that are part of our first class, Ruben, Francis, Mark Fletcher, I could go on and on and on. All those guys now enter what will be their third year. All right, our first class are now juniors, to put in perspective where we are in terms of the growth of our program and our roster. Those guys now, their bodies should be significantly different. So what you should see is a more explosive Ruben Bain, a more powerful Francis, a more dynamic Mark Fletcher, who all last year right? He spent rehabbing and getting ready for the season and hasn't had a full off season, you know? So I know you mentioned, you know, guys specifically, but I want to kind of paint a little perspective on that. Yeah, this is a critical off season from a development standpoint and from a leadership standpoint, because now it's their turn. Now they're the ones front and center. Now they're the ones that got to step out in front, because you certainly can't lead from the back.
Anytime coordinator changes happen, sometimes that can be changed with position coaches too. Is there anything you can share a comment on that side, the defensive side of the ball, where things stand maybe with some of the position coaches?
Well, right now, status quo. We assess everything. If there's ever any news for change, so we try to get that to everybody. We feel great about the guys that have worked here and that are working here, but college football is, you know, it is what it is. So we'll keep everybody informed on any changes that may take place.
Obviously, with some change, having Shannon Dawson return, how valuable is that to have a coordinator going for the third straight year?
Well,
Production is called.
You know, and Shannon Dawson has, you've all seen the type of job that he's done. He's done an even better job behind the scenes, bringing everybody together and galvanizing the offensive staff and the offensive players. It's ultra valuable to do that, because then you spend your off seasons self-scouting and then morphing and evolving. So once the self-scout is done and we identify what we can do really well, now we hit the road or bring people in, both at the NFL and college level, where we can find an edge, or we can now start taking that next step for, okay, what does the offense for Miami look like in 25, 26, and beyond. So it's, when you have continuity, especially after parts of, you know, as it relates to success and continuity, it's tremendously beneficial in the offseason while never forgetting the core principles that guide you.
I want to ask you about David Blake too, and his interesting journey to get here. What stand out about him as a player when
Oh man,
you're evaluating him?
he's awesome. I mean, he's what you look for in an interior defensive lineman. Tough, explosive, strong. I mean, his block destruction, his ability to tear off and make plays, hard guy to block, and a guy that really disrupts, you know, the pocket and passing game and makes it really difficult to move in the running game. And looking for signs, you know, he's, I guess all his stuff is being processed, so he's got to work out later today. I was looking forward to watching him running around out there, but man, he's a guy we're extremely excited about.
I wanted to ask you about CJ Daniels, the guy that you guys pursued last offseason, didn't end up working out, ended up in Miami this year. How awesome was it finding him, making become Hurricane? What do you expect from him?
You know, there's a new saying in college football. When I first started coaching, there was always saying that there's no prize for second place in recruitment. And now in college football, there is, because there's a transfer portal. If you come in second place, you're probably first place when they get in the portal. So it's proven to be true in his case. We think he's a dynamic guy, big, strong, fast, and his contested catch rate is really, really impressive. And he does all the dirty work too. He's going to go in there and put his hat on a safety, block a linebacker, because he's big and strong and experienced. And another thing that, you know, about him is talking to the people that have been around him for a long time. They say he's a great team guy. So looking forward to working with him.
Coach, what do you think about Malachi Tony, what he was able to do in the state title run in his senior year when he reclassed?
This is probably your plug-in for him at quarterback, I imagine. So he's a wide receiver for us, even though he did a great job. You know, he stepped in there in the state final. I think it was 15 of 15 before he threw us his first incompletion. How about that? Imagine that. Just, you know, you're a good athlete when you're able to switch positions and against the best competition and absolutely light it up. And he's a big reason why American Heritage won a state title. And also people realize he's reclassed, so he's a young guy. You know, you're going to see a guy, Armando Blunt's a great example. Young guy reclassed, now his body is really catching up. He's going to have a monster spring and a great year. Malachi Tony is a little bit more mature physically. He's a tad bit older, and we expect him to have a significant impact sooner than later.
Mario,
This is a long way down the road. But do you mention at all to this team that you've got 8 home games this coming season and there's the national title games on your field as well? Does that get dropped as a carrot for this group at all?
Not right now. Not right now. Our goal is to get as strong as we need to be, as well conditioned as we need to be, know our systems as well as possible to be able to compete in the spring for a spot. you know, we can't skip steps. You know, it's like every year, probably the biggest thing that sticks out, it's like, it's a reset button. You really can't assume that culture is going to pick up where it left off and it's going to keep climbing. You really got to, in a sense, start all over. Maybe not all the way back because you got some guys in the building, but don't assume it. Go from the beginning and go to work and really focus on the things that are going to make us better. Because we do, from a technical and fundamental standpoint, we got to take it other monster jump. We've been progressing every single year, and we don't want to stop that. We want to accelerate everything we possibly can. And the only way to accelerate that is to make sure that we're not skipping any steps.
Concerning two more, we'll go Daryl and then we'll end with Cooper.
Concerning the transfer portal, when an athlete decides to get into the transfer portal and they fill out the paperwork that's needed, does the school have the option not to release them? How does that process work?
As far as we know, once a player has filled it out correctly, a school has 48 hours where they, at the end of the 48-hour period, they have to put the player's name in the portal.
They have to.
That's as far as I know. You know, sometimes if it's a guy internally that wants to go somewhere, we help them out and get them in there earlier. But the schools have, I believe it's 48 hours, and I don't think Saturday and Sunday count as business days. So if a guy goes in on Friday, then it gets bumped around a little bit.
All right.
I got one, Cam. If it, a couple things. The point of emphasis, I know you just touched on a little bit about building the program. Point of emphasis now for your strength and conditioning program until spring ball.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that a little bit, and do you have a date for spring ball starting?
We do, and what I've done for that is I'm preparing some bullet points for the next press conference that really highlight, you know, all the goals that we do have, because until our defense coordinator gets settled in and the rest of our personnel is settled in, and I get a chance to meet with everybody, I want to make sure that there's complete clarity top to bottom. I have my staples that never ever change, but certainly want to give you a more in-depth and more detailed, I would say almost a prescription, right, that you use for your team when you head into winter conditioning and certainly get over into. But one thing's for certain, the DNA of your team, the connection of your team, and the beginning of the identity of your team is formed now. It is. This is January, February, March foundation before spring ball is critical for your program to take a step. You know, and not only physically, because you're going to set a foundation now where you're going to be able to endure longer drives. You're going to be able to fight through more difficult double teams and blocks or whatnot. But the mental side and the connection side is paramount. And this is a time where that takes a significant leap.